Every time you hatch gorgeous spring chicks with your Brinsea incubator, you are going to end up with chick fluff, chick poop, egg goo and all sorts of other stuff inside your incubator, which is a sensitive bit of electronic equipment. Today I'm going to show you how to take it apart, clean it properly. I'm going to show you where the pitfalls are in doing that, and I'm going to teach you how to avoid them. Hello, welcome to English Country Life. My name's Hugh, and together with a fabulous Fiona who's got a sore paw or a badly broken leg at the moment, we run a small holding here in rural Lincolnshire, and we breed Buff Orpington chickens back there, and it's a fabulous thing to do and we really enjoy it. But every time we use one of our Brinsea incubators, which we love, we think they're the best incubators in the world, you do get all kinds of muck and gunk inside the incubator, and it's vitally important to properly clean and sterilise your incubator before the next hatch. Otherwise you can get a build-up of all kind of nasties in there that are going to compromise the sterility and the integrity of your next hatch. Now, the first time I took an incubator to bits in order to clean it out, I was really nervous. It's a complicated piece of equipment, but honestly it's really quite straightforward to do once you know all the equipment you need, where the pitfalls are and what are the right techniques to use. And I'm going to share with you exactly today what I use and how I do it step by step for both a dome incubator and an Ovation box type incubator. So let's get started. So this incubator has been used for a hatch, and I want to show you all the things that you need to think about in order to give it a good clean and service. First things first, we'll remove the working parts and we'll look at the base. And in the base, what I've got here is a hatching mat. This is a clean one. I've already thrown away the used one, but these are one-time use corrugated cardboard mats, and they make sure that your chick gets a really good purchase. It's not slipping around on a shiny plastic floor. And if it does slide around, you can get things like splayed leg and injuries, so they really are worth getting. If you don't want to buy them, happily make your own out of a piece of corrugated cardboard. But after a hatch, these will be covered in chick poop, egg goo, and goodness knows what else. There is no way to clean them, so you simply remove them and throw them away. Now, let's take a look at the working parts of the incubator, because they have their own things that need some attention. So this is the working parts of the incubator, and it's got a bunch of electronics up here, and things like the fan are protected by a double wall of clear plastic below. There's a couple of things I want to point out. The first one is, depending on how you manage the humidity, which varies model by model, you can get a build-up of limescale. So we have very hard water here, and this is an EX model with a humidity pump which drips water out of this nozzle, runs it down into the incubator to keep the humidity at the right level. But if you look closely, you can see a white streak here, and that is limescale build-up from our hard water, so we need to get rid of that. The other problem that we get is a build-up of fluff. So chicks are covered in a very fine down, and because we've got a fan under here blowing warm air to keep them comfortable, that fluff goes everywhere. So I'm going to zoom in and show you fluff build-up. Now, can you see all those little tiny fine fibres? And I'll put my finger there for sort of scale. Those are bits of down from the chicks, and when they dry out and fluff up in the incubator, because there's a fan running, that fine down goes everywhere and gets caught between the two layers of the lid, and it's organic matter, and we need to clean that out. Let me run you quickly through the tools that I use for cleaning and servicing incubators. First things first, PZ1 size 1 screwdriver, except no substitutes, and a little pot to keep the screws you remove safe in. 2 clean paintbrushes, dry ones, 1/2 inch and 1 inch, 1/2 inch to get into the nooks and crannies, 1 inch for big sweeping to get rid of all the chick fluff. Pair of nose pliers. There's a couple of little electrical connections that it's possible to pull loose when you're inside the incubator. It's no problem, easy to reconnect, much easier to reconnect with a very fine pair of nose pliers than my big fat fingers. For the actual cleaning, I use the Brinsea's own incubation disinfectant concentrate. This stuff goes a long way. You put a tiny amount of that into a litre of water in a hand sprayer. It's brilliant for cleaning and disinfecting, and I do that with a clean lint-free cloth. A couple of my own little sort of tips and tricks. I've got one of these. Tiny little handheld vacuum cleaner meant for cleaning keyboards, but you can buy them on Amazon and eBay just for a few pounds. Really good for getting rid of all that chick fluff and getting it out the way rather than just moving it around with a brush. So I really like these. And I also keep some of this, distilled white vinegar, because if you get hard lime scale, it's actually really hard to remove it without scratching the plastic. But if you put a little bit of this on a bit of kitchen towel and just leave it for a few minutes, because it's very slightly acid, it will soften up the chalky lime scale, make it much easier to remove. Now that's not a Brinsea advised tip, that's just what I do with my incubators, and I find it makes life much easier. Let's have a look how we do the cleaning. So I'm going to mix up a fresh batch of my disinfectant from Brinsea, and it's so simple because you dilute it 100 to 1. So all I'm going to do is take a level teaspoonful and very carefully pour it into 500 mils of water, and that'll go a long way. That'll clean 2 or 3 incubators easy. Now, in order to service it, I am going to set the lid of my incubator upside down on the flat surface of the lid on a clutter-free work surface. Make sure before you do anything else, of course, it's not plugged in. Now, it's important to have this upside down when you disassemble it, because some of the things like the motor here are just sat in little cups and they're held by the 2 parts of the lid in place. So you must have it upside down, and then they will stay in place when you remove the inner layer of plastic. There are 8 screws to remove. There's 4 at each corner, there's 2 on the long edges, and there are 2 by the fan assembly. I've got a pot ready, and I'm going to use my PZ1 screwdriver to remove the screws. It's a crosshead screwdriver, but there are different types and sizes of crosshead screwdriver, and I know most of you know that, but in case you don't, there are 2 types in the UK of cross-headed screws, Phillips and PZ1. This one you'll see has PH1 that's actually marked on the screwdriver. That's a size 1 Phillips. This one has PZ1. That's a size 1 PZ1. And just for illustration, this one has PZ2, which is a bigger end. Now, Phillips and PZ1 screwdrivers are not the same, and neither are the different sizes. If you use the wrong size or the wrong type, you will damage the screw heads, and getting your incubator apart after a period of time will become problematic. So always use a size 1 PZ PZ1 screwdriver, PZ1. If you don't have one, I'll put a link in the description to where you can find a size 1 PZ1. Here's a close-up just to prove my point. This is a Phillips screwdriver, and you can see that the cuts in the end are much longer and at a different angle than a PZ1. And the PZ1 actually has an extra little inlet divot there, which helps it grip the screw, that the Phillips screwdriver doesn't. These things don't matter. What it does matter is if you try and undo a PZ1 screw with a Phillips screwdriver, it will probably skate out of the head, damage the head, and it will make it harder to get it in and out in the future. So, screwdriver you want, PZ1 size 1. Now, I want to show you why I like these Stanley Fatmax screwdrivers. And a good quality screwdriver for this kind of job is an investment, but these will really grip the screw nicely, they fit well, and they're magnetic, so they lift the screw out and I can drop them off into my little pot to keep them safe. And when you're dealing with recessed screws like these, which are down inside a housing, the ability to lift the screw out magnetically makes a huge difference. So sadly, I am not endorsed by Stanley, but these Stanley Fatmax screwdrivers in a range of sizes, really, if you're going to do jobs like this, are worth the investment. They really are. With that inner cover out the way, there's 2 things it's vitally important to understand. That the motor and the fan are now loose. The fan sits on 4 posts. Motor sits in a moulding, and with the inner cover in place, they are locked tight. But once that inner cover is removed, they are both loose. And the fan has 2 wires that go down to a socket inside the assembly. And if that drops loose, it will pull the plug off the socket. Now, that's why I've got a pair of nose pliers to hand, because if it comes off with a pair of nose pliers, it's very easy just to put the plug back in. It'll only go on the right way round. It's absolutely fine, but it's a sort of area where you just can't get a couple of fat fingers inside. So having a pair of nose pliers just saves any drama in case you accidentally manage to remove your fan assembly. Now you've got a good view of all of that fluff that's building up inside. And this is where I like to have the little 1/2-inch paintbrush, because I can get right in there, and as you can see, I can start to move all that fluff away. And eventually I can gather it up using a cloth that's been dampened with a bit of the Brinsea disinfectant and get it out of the unit completely, because you don't just want to move it around with a brush, you need to remove it completely. If we look at the other side of the assembly, I'm going to demonstrate my little handheld vacuum cleaner, which does make this job so easy. In some areas you will get build-ups, just like here. You can see little areas of sort of yellowy material. That again is chick fluff, and it kind of builds up, and it's often damp when it comes out, so it solidifies. So the use of the dry brush will help us disturb that, get it off the fan assembly, knock it down to the bottom where we can hoover it up. It is worth lifting the fan assembly off its legs and very carefully, bearing in mind there's a wire here, move it to one side so we can clear out underneath any material that's built up here. And again, we'll brush it to one side and then we'll hoover it up. Once I've brushed out under the fan assembly, I'm going to take my clean, lint-free cloth, a few squirts onto the cloth, not onto the incubator, just dampens the cloth. And what that's going to do is allow me to wipe up and gather up any remaining bits of fluff that are adhering to the plastic. Do be careful not to dislodge either the motor or the fan while you do this. And you might need a cotton bud just to get in behind these little pillars where the screws go. With the outer lid dealt with, we'll deal with the inner lid. And again, we can see the level of fluff build up from a single hatch. So, squirt on another clean cloth of our Brinsea disinfectant solution, and we can simply wipe off all of that fluff that's building up on top of the inner cover. The fluff cleaned off, we're left with this problem limescale. Now this only happens on the EX model in this location, because that's where the water drips from the humidity pump and gradually evaporates. And obviously, if that water is containing limescale, the limescale builds up on the plastic housing. Now, limescale is calcium carbonate. Basically, it's chalk, and chalk dissolves in acid. So what we're going to do is we're going to take just a bit of white distilled vinegar, and we're going to dampen a piece of kitchen towel. And then when that's wadded up, we'll just lay it onto the limescale for a few minutes, and it will gradually soften that limescale and make it much easier to remove. There you go. Now it might take 2 or 3 applications, sort of 10-minute intervals, to clean that up, but nothing scratched. Just wipe it down. Make sure you get rid of any residual vinegar using either water or a bit of the Brinsea disinfectant, and that cleans right up. And vinegar will do a nice job on the inside of a sealed kettle as well. It's just using a gentle acid to dissolve away any limescale. When everything's clean, time to reassemble. Now, if you've got an EX model, look for the little spout where the water comes out. Because when you put the inner cover back inside, you want the area that the water runs down to be underneath, or because this is inverted, on top of that spout, so the water will drip from the spout onto that area. Then we put the screws back in. 4 corner screws first, then these edge screws, then the deep screws. When you're putting the screws in the long side, it can be a bit fiddly because you've got to line up the holes between the inner and outer covers. And that's why you put the corner screws in first, because it roughly lines them up. But don't be frightened to give them a little bit of a squeeze just to get those holes to line up. And when they are, that screw will go straight in. With the 2 deep screw holes, again, magnetic screwdriver is your friend. It'll help you locate the screw properly, and they'll go in very easily. Now, with all of these, don't over tighten the screws. The screw is ultimately screwing into a threaded piece of plastic, and if you over tighten it, you can break the plastic. Finally, it's important to clean at the base of the incubator. Remove the covers for the water reservoirs, clean them separately. If you're using an Advance or an Eco model, it may be that you'll get a bit of limescale build-up just here on the water reservoirs. You can use a similar treatment with vinegar to get rid of that, and then a few squirts of the Brinsea disinfectant. Give it all a good wipe over, make sure everything is sparklingly clean. There we are. It takes far longer to talk about than it actually takes to do. And honestly, 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes with a reasonably small set of tools gets your Brinsea Ovation incubator clean and sanitised. You can see through it really nice and easily, and it's totally hygienic for your next hatch. Let's take a quick look at the Maxi 24, because there's just a couple of subtle differences when cleaning a dome incubator. The screw arrangement and the internal cover on the dome incubators, typically the Maxi 24 or the Mini, are slightly different. So we'll just take a very quick look at the differences with those. First things first, the same, remove the base, turn the top cover over so that we can get to the screws. On the Maxi 24, it's not always obvious that there even is a second cover because it's deeply recessed, but this is the jagged edge of the internal second cover on the Maxi 24 that protects the electronics. On this one, there's only 4 screws, and they are recessed, but not as deeply as the 2 recessed screws on the Ovation. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, they are PosiDrive #1 screws. Use a right screwdriver. Now this is an important point if you have an EX model of the Maxi 24. This pipe that delivers the water to manage humidity actually passes through the inner cover. So you have to withdraw that pipe. You can just gently pull it from the outside, but in order to remove the inner cover, you have to pull that back or you'll damage it. Now I find having to move this pipe just a little bit awkward, but there's an upside of the Maxi 24. The motor is tucked away on this edge and is therefore much less likely to be disturbed. The fan is exactly the same as on the Ovation series. It's sat on 4 posts and is movable. But what I do find, which is curious with the Maxi 24, is the fan blades themselves seem to attract quite a lot of the fluff, and you'll definitely need to take a soft brush to that to remove it, or use your little handy vacuum cleaner. You will have to carefully reinsert the straw back into its holder when you reassemble. But honestly, as you can see, it's not difficult. And you want to line the end up with the centre of that circle so the drips fall in exactly the right place. Then it's the 4 screws back into their holes, and that's the upper assembly clean. Again, not over tightening the screws so that we don't damage the plastic. So my spray bottle still reads 500 ml, even though I've cleaned 2 incubators with it. And honestly, you might even want to use like half a teaspoonful, make up 250 ml at a time, because with this stuff, and we've only used 1/20th of one small bottle, a little does go a really long way. But it is worth having your incubators clean, shiny, and properly hygienic before the next hatch. That's how we clean and service our Brinsea incubators, and honestly it really is worth doing. These things are a fantastic quality product and they are a long-term investment, but just like your car, when it's been used it does need a little bit of servicing to keep it in the absolute tip-top condition. It's a slightly nerve-wracking thing when you do it first, but hopefully today's video has taken a lot of that fear factor away from us. If you've got any questions though, put them down in the comments down below. I'll try and answer all the questions about how to maintain your Brinsea incubators. They are fantastic bits of kit and they are built for long-term use, and Brinsea support their incubators even long after they stop manufacturing a particular model, and that for me is a sign of a quality bit of kit. If you haven't got an incubator and you're thinking of getting one, we do sell all the Brinsea range of home incubators in our shop. I'll put a link down in the description below. If you've got any questions about what's the right model for me, what should I get in touch with us. You can get in touch with us through the shop and we'll be happy to give you individual advice. If you've enjoyed today's video, can you spare us 5 seconds? Give us a thumbs up down below. If you've got any questions on incubation as a general topic, leave it in the comments. We'll try and get back to you and maybe even make a special video for you to explain that aspect of incubation. And if you'd like to see those videos and everything else we do on our self-sufficient life, just tap on subscribe down there and hit the bell next to it. It's a completely free service that alerts you every time we upload a new video. But for today, thanks for joining me and the chickens. Come back and see us soon. Take care.